I do remember having these small moments where I would sit down and the thoughts would start pouring in on, dude, you're about to be a dad. Do you even know what you're doing? Do you know what you're going to say? You start thinking about that child's life from the moment that they're born all the way to the end. There was no amount of preparation that prepares you. But the funny thing is that even when they're born, you're ready. Just like something awakens inside of you and you are all of a sudden dad.
Welcome to this new series called Who Teaches Who. My name is Ryan, and this podcast was born out of my curiosity of how to be a well-rounded parent. My wife and I are having our first child in October, and naturally, I have a lot of questions about what it takes to be a father. So I'm setting out to talk with everybody that I can to learn as much as I can so that I'll be ready to not be ready to be a dad. So if you enjoyed this first episode, feel free to subscribe or leave a review. Enjoy. Well, I want to welcome my best friend since 6th grade, Jared Hughes, to this first episode. So Jared, welcome, and thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So this is the first episode in this series, and I want to give a little bit of context first before we jump into your story about what this series is and what we hope to accomplish. So it's been a couple years now that my wife and I have been wanting to have kids, and hasn't quite worked out in the past few years. So we're finally there. We're about 8 weeks along right now. We just found out, pretty recently that we're having a kid. We're due later this year, so we're excited. And from that, and just from the past few years, I've just had tons of questions about what it means to be a parent, what it's like to actually have a kid that you're going to be raising and growing and developing and teaching, about this world and teaching about relationships and how to interact with people. So I'm starting this just as a curiosity project because I want to get as much advice and insight as I can, before going into parenting to help myself out and not be someone that overthinks parenting, but that's equipped enough that I feel confident that I'm not going to know everything, but I'm going to have a pretty good understanding as I go into it, and so that we can be great parents. So Jared, back to you. I want to have you introduce yourself a little bit and talk a little bit about your family, kind of about your kids, their ages, and just kind of give some insight into who you are.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Jared Hughes. I currently reside in Austin, Texas with my wife, Paige. We have 3 boys. The oldest is Bentley. He is currently 6. The second oldest is Jackson, or Jack as we call him. He is 4. And we have a new guy in our family, McAllen. We call him Mac, and he is 7 months at the time of this recording.
So like I said, we're about 8 weeks along now, so this is all very new to us. So as I go throughout this series, I want to be recording these throughout the process of us being pregnant. And I want to start and go back to in your life where we are at this point. So I want to ask you what it was like. So I'm go pretty heavy here right off the bat. Thinking back to when you guys first found out that you were pregnant. As a male, as a guy, what was that like when you guys first found out that you were going to have a kid?
So, and Ryan, you know this, but my wife and I, we were one of the first in our little friend group to get married. We were 23, 22. And that was exciting. We kind of wanted to get going in life. We wanted to get started as a married couple, at least. And I remember I had a rough time as a husband because I was still waiting tables as a server. I was trying to make a name for myself in my career, and it just wasn't panning out. And I decided to start exploring other job avenues and other careers. And I was still going through a lot of training and schooling to go do what I would eventually do. But I remember I was living with my wife in a friend's house. They had above their, like a second floor studio style apartment. And we were living there, and they had offered it to us to kind of get our feet underneath us, save some money up. You don't have to pay us, just help us around the house. and it was a good opportunity for us. Not long living there, I had also started finishing my schooling and different things like that. So I was in the middle of a job interview process with a company. I remember waking up one morning. I was about to have to go to work, and I was laying in bed, and the bathroom light was on, and Paige walked out and just starts pushing me in the bed, just starts shaking me. My eyes are blurry. I couldn't see straight. The lights were fuzzy. And she's just holding something in front of my face. And she says, "Look, look." I couldn't make out what I was looking at. I thought it was a thermometer. I was like, "Are you sick?" And she said, "No, look again." And I looked, and then I saw it was a pregnancy test. And I was thinking, why is she showing me this? And then it kind of dinged in my head as you wake up a little bit that you're looking at a pregnancy test. And typically, people don't show you pregnancy tests that haven't shown you pregnancy tests before if there's not something to look at. And so I was kind of looking at it, wondering what's the line? I don't understand these lines. And kind of realized in my head, I think she's trying to tell me she's pregnant. And that was the moment I found out. I want to say it was just immediately there. I just couldn't breathe or anything, but that was not the case. The fact that I was just woken up, I remember looking at it and going, "Oh, good." And then I fell back asleep. Literally, not even 30 seconds. I couldn't even close my eyes. My mind started racing. Yeah, things kind of, your heart drops into your stomach a little bit, especially if you weren't expecting it.
Yeah, I can imagine being asleep and then getting woken up with that kind of information is probably confusing to say the least. You
Very.
kind of understand it, but at the same time, you might be wondering, is this a dream? Is this real? What does this actually mean? Like, come back in an hour.
Definitely. And just for the record, it was where we were when it came to wanting to know if we wanted to have kids. We were at the point at this, I think we had been married probably 2 years, going on 2 years. And we found out, I think, in around the February-ish time of the year that my first was born. He was born in November. I think it was that. That's probably right about the time. And I remember around that time, I mean, obviously, living in someone else's home, that's not a good time to have a kid. And I remember, I think the way we were kind of imagining this was, if we get pregnant, we get pregnant. But I don't think we've never been the ones to plan accordingly and time it up and get it just right. It's kind of been, if it happens, it happens. And yeah, so it definitely wasn't planned, but I don't want to say we were we weren't not trying.
Yeah, so you kind of knew at any point, we could get pregnant, and I'm totally fine with that, but we're not necessarily like, actively, we want a kid, we want it to happen now kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously kind of being younger, not the smartest, but if you were to ask somebody, is this the best time to have a kid? We would have easily told you no. This is not the best time to have a kid.
Yeah. No, I mean, we, since we've been trying to have a kid, for years, we've had people ask, and we have conversations about, people, going to ask, when are you going to have a kid? Are you trying? What's going on? And so we always, sometimes we brush it off or kind of nervously talked and just said like, we're just kind of waiting for the right time. Not that they know all of what's going on in our lives, but we're just kind of saying that to gloss over. And they're like, oh, well, there's never a right time. And it's true. I mean, everybody has their kids at different points, whether they're kind of expecting it or not. And, I think everyone, they're going to rise to the occasion how they're going to. So there's never going to be a right time. Everyone's right about that, but it's going to be the right time for you, whether you're kind of ready for it or not.
Yeah, and I always get excited when people want to know, as a couple, are you trying to have a family or not? And there are certain ways to word that question, but It is the most awkward of questions, in
Hmm.
my opinion, to be asked. Are you having sex with the intention of getting pregnant?
Yes.
Or are you being safe when you have sex? That is the weirdest. If you really reworded that question, that is exactly what they're asking you. And it is a very awkward question to be asked. And I personally, I feel like a lot of people really need to try to word that question a little different
Yeah.
because it's such a it can make a lot of young couples very, very awkward.
Yeah, it seems to be it's the first question, like right after you get married. That's always, when are you going to have kids or are you trying to have kids? And you're right, the question is inherently, I mean, super personal. For one, I've always found the answer is probably tougher than the question. Like I can handle the question being kind of weird, but I tend when I get a little bit nervous to I just kind of say the wrong weird things. I have a pretty good habit about that, so I end up answering probably, not in too much detail, but I'm kind of approaching that line of like,
Hey, if it's
yeah,
an awkward question, send an awkward question right back at them, or at least an awkward answer.
yeah,
Especially if like you get asked at a wedding, like
hmm,
your wedding. Hey, when you having kids, the most awkward answer you can give is hopefully tonight. But
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. If anything, just lean into the awkwardness and make it weird back at them. Some, but yeah, I mean, I'll probably hit this topic with probably everybody I talk to because the more since over the past few years that we've been wanting to have kids and it just hasn't worked out, the more conversations we've had with people and the more we've seen how many complications there can be like biologically with either side
Right.
trying to have a kid. And a lot of times those questions just get like annoying and kind of hurtful to us because like, okay, that's our business. Like I understand you're not trying to be mean or malicious or anything, but it's a personal topic, and maybe we don't want kids. We have friends that don't want kids.
Very.
That's
Yeah.
totally fine. Like we don't go around bugging them and telling them they have to have kids, but by asking, you're kind of you're putting that on somebody that hey, I expect you to bear children. So when's that going to happen?
Yeah, and a lot of times that's not the goal for a couple. At least not right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times what has happened is many people just assume that is why you get married is so you can go have kids.
Hmm.
And really think a lot of focus needs to be on the husband and wife right after you get married. You need to focus on that friendship, that relationship, and build that to make it stronger because even at 2 years for my wife and I would have loved to have maybe a little more for us to get stronger together and know each other very personally, even more so than we already did, and even more sometimes than we still already do of
Hmm.
each other. Because I think when you know your spouse and you know what's going to be happening eventually, the more you get to know them, the more you get to see them interact and react in certain situations. The stronger you get, the better parenting decisions you'll make together. Because when you're young and you start off young, I think any young couple can tell you it is not easy, especially if you are pregnant early on, and for some couples pregnant even before they get married. It can get very difficult if you don't know who you're working with there.
Yeah, that's one thing we've been grateful for, I guess. It's kind of a byproduct of needing to take some time before we were able now to have a kid. Is I mean, we've learned more about what works and doesn't work for each other and how I need to interact with her, to be respectful to her, and that's just gonna keep going into parenting because I mean, there's worlds of questions I could ask about how to take care of each other and be a strong parenting front together and not become a divided couple that we're each going to have our own kind of styles, and when you have the kid you're going to do these things, and when I have him I'm going to do this, and that's just how it's going to be, and that's fine. Like we need to be able to come together and make decisions together that make sense.
You want to present like a united front.
Yeah.
You don't want to have go ask your mom, go ask your dad on every single topic that happens in your house.
Hmm. Yeah, and I definitely see that. I know kids, they're sneaky, so they'll ask one and they'll go say, yeah, mom said this.
Absolutely. Our oldest already does it.
Yeah, so they're going to do that regardless. So not necessarily in that way, but just yeah, I don't want to start a culture within our family of that's expected and that's okay. That You kind of do
Oh,
your
yeah, and
parenting, I do my parenting, and then when we're together, we'll kind of do some things together and compromise. But we're each gonna kind of do our own thing. I want to share like insight that I've gained, or like, I mean, even through this, like I want to be able to share this information with her so that she understands. Okay, this is where his thinking is coming from. This is why he's doing this kind of parenting or doing these kinds of lessons, because he wants to get this across. And the more we can communicate together and talk about that, I think the more we can come up with a plan, as a group of two parents to approach our kids in that way. So going back to when you found out, so obviously there's probably some different stages involved there, and maybe this came a few weeks later, a month later. Maybe you had this before actual finding out. But did you have any kind of introspective thoughts? So I gave you the background on what I'm trying to do here with these episodes. Is I'm curious, and I want to just learn from people. Is really the main goal, not to become the best parent. I just want to learn and be well equipped. Did you start having curious thoughts and like, okay, what do I do? What kind of parent do I want to be? Did you have those kind of thoughts early on?
yeah. So when it came to knowing what kind of things to know for getting ready to be pregnant, throughout the whole pregnancy, I do remember having these small moments where I would sit down and the thoughts would start pouring in on, dude, you're about to be a dad. Do you even know what you're doing? Do you know what you're going to say? Do you know how you're going to raise this kid? Do you know what kind of decisions you're going to make? And just kind of sitting there wondering, are you going to be a good father? You start thinking about that child's life from moment that they're born all the way to the end. And I would have to sit there and regather all of my thoughts on taking care of an infant, taking care of a baby, and I would calm down. I would just kind of move on because I wasn't going to learn it all right then and there. And one thing that I know that is half the things that I tried to learn or get ready for or prepared for, they all went out the window as soon as our first was born. It There was no amount of preparation that prepares you. But the funny thing is that even when they're born, you're ready. Your human instincts take over. You become a parent easily. You should, in my opinion, it kind of just be mentally given. It's really weird, but it just like something awakens inside of you, and you are all of a sudden dad, and it is the coolest feeling. Um, I think it kind of goes in with that. Oh, I feel like I was told by a lot of people, you'll never, you've always experienced love between, a friend of yours, and you've always experienced love between you and your spouse. But there's another kind of love, and it's that love for your child, and you haven't experienced that yet. And as soon as they're born, it comes in and it overwhelms you, and it is the coolest experience ever. And I definitely had that. I was so ready for that, and sure enough, it hits you like a ton of bricks. It is the coolest feeling to all of a sudden just see and feel a new kind of love. And as soon as that happened, it is like internally I kind of knew what I was doing. Now sure, I ran into a lot of obstacles, a lot of things like, how do I do this? What am I doing here? And from then on, you just kind of have to roll with the punches, uh, take a deep breath, figure out what you're going to do. It does help to kind of get ahead of it, but there is no, as many books as there are out there, in my opinion, there is no one end all be all book that answers every single thing you're going to go through.
Yeah. I mean, I often think about knowing that moment's coming, the first time you see your kid. Every post online that people do, announcing their kid or talking to people, that's always like, that's just an indescribable moment. And so I know that, I can't fully experience that yet, but just me being me, I always kind of try to put myself there emotionally sometimes and try to think like, what's that going to be like? And so I get those moments, you get the chills and kind of get overwhelmed a little bit, and like,
Yeah.
and that's just even thinking about that moment. So
Yeah, definitely. And for my wife, she had to have a emergency C-section with Bentley, our first. And that was definitely more traumatic than it should be for anyone. But I remember we were in the operating room, and I got to sit by uh, her head and kind of talk to her and look at her and the whole time. And I just remember looking at her when we heard Bentley's first
Mm-hmm.
cries as a baby, and uh, yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, tears welled up in my face. It was a great feeling. You're sitting there going, the baby we made, the human being that is just now being born. We just heard his voice for the very first time, and it is and yeah, sure, it was a cry, but uh, my goodness, that is the coolest feeling to have, and that is when it hit me. And then you walk over and you get to see him, and it is as a guy, it's weird. You're just sitting there, kind of like, whoa, um, like we created this together, this little person, and it is the coolest feeling. Nothing can prepare you for that. And yeah, I'm an empathic person, and I did the same thing you do, where I just try to get myself in those shoes as early as I can. But you're absolutely right. You can't fully experience it until you actually do. And I loved every bit of that moment. No matter, and I know that not everybody gets to enjoy that moment as much as I did, because, like I said, emergency C-section, we're kind of in a little
Mm-hmm.
mini crisis, but definitely we weren't in the worst of shape. We weren't in the best of shape, but um, man, getting to see him just kind of wipes away all that momentous fear that you had, and then another wave of fear and terror after you've felt that love all of a sudden hits you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to take care of you. And then you're worried about every noise in that operating room, and you're wondering what they're doing to your baby, and they're cutting a cord, and you're like, hey, should you be cutting that? And you
Yeah.
start, yeah, it just all of a sudden everything clicks and changes. And like I said, parental instincts take over, and it is a very, very cool
Yeah.
moment.
No, I've seen us both, and we're not those kind of like, our dogs are like human children kind of people, but I'm always someone to try to take, educational examples out of any kind of moment. So I've seen just even with our dogs, when something goes wrong, both of us kind of spring into that parenting kind of mode of, you just do it. There's not really a question. There's not a wonder. Like, okay, what do I need to do? How should I be acting right now? You jump in and you take care of, in this case, the dogs, but in the future, our kids. I know that, when
Yeah.
it comes to actual human life, that, for as much as we're not going to be, quote unquote, prepared, we'll be ready, and we'll do everything we can. It's your life doesn't
Yeah.
matter at that point; it's theirs.
I mean, you often hear that a lot of couples will get some sort of pet
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of quell the desire for kids at the moment. And personally, yeah, I mean, taking care of a pet, I think any parent these days, when another couple who doesn't have kids references taking care of their pets, and tries in an attempt to kind of
Yeah,
compare to taking care of kids, and it'll happen for you. It's happened for us multiple times, and I remember doing it myself. Well, I can take care of a dog, and yeah, you can. And then you have a kid, and then you find other friends who are talking about taking care of their pet, and you just sit there, and it's at this point with us, that is probably something I've heard over and over again.
yeah,
Like, well, when we take care of our animals, and I think any any parent, and I can't wait for you to experience it when you hear it
yeah,
too, being told to you, it
yeah,
is the funniest thing, because you have to sit there, and of course, most people who reference their dogs and reference taking care of animals, or whatever it is, they know full well that taking care of a dog is much, much easier. And so it's kind of like you both understand what you're explaining, but on the actual, like on the actual side of actually having the kid versus someone telling you who has no kids, referencing their dog, you're like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to reference my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in for a wake up. Just, and it is the funniest thing. I always try to point it out to everybody who references their
Mm,
animals. It's funny because I remember taking care of our dog, thinking, well, I take them for walks and I feed them and I take them to the doctor, and then you have a screaming child at you. Yeah, you're going, there's no way this is relevant to that dog.
yeah.
But it is funny. I will admit though, there is a something to be said though in raising pets that will slightly be imitated when raising a child. It definitely teaches you to take care of another living
Yeah.
being, and it definitely gives you a peek into, yeah, the go times, the hey, something's wrong, hey, we need to do this, the shared care of something. That is definitely something it prepares you for. But I think anybody knows that it is, while similar, it is completely different.
Yeah. No, I definitely treat it as, it, like you said, it helps a little bit to understand there's something else that I have to take care of besides myself, and beyond just, besides myself and my wife, there's another living,
Exactly.
breathing thing that I have to, in the least let outside, feed, that kind of thing. But that's a mere glimpse compared to raising a kid. And not, I mean, obviously I haven't
Exactly.
had one yet, but I've been around your kids for years. We have lots of friends. I have, lots of nieces and nephews. And so seeing that difference, and then, I sit there, at family Christmases sometimes and just think through, like, it's a human. This is totally different than, if I was that person, than like raising a dog. It's not, it's a
Yeah.
glimpse at it, at what it takes, but I wouldn't say in any way it's any sort of gauge that, like, okay, I can take care of a dog, surely I can take care of a kid. I mean, yes, your
Right.
parenting instincts should kick in. You'll rise to the occasion and you'll probably do great, but it's not, I wouldn't use it as a measurement by any means. Thinking through, younger people that are in that phase where they're actually thinking, okay, well, if I get a puppy, we'll kind of see from there if we like raising
Yeah.
something. Small glimpse, but not a gauge at all. So I want
Exactly.
to go back to more so when you found out you guys were pregnant. So you kind of already talked about the backside of this as far as
Uh-huh.
resources that you looked into. So you mentioned books a couple times. I'm curious, since that's kind of becoming our next phase. So obviously we'll do the book reading, we'll do all those things. But were there other resources that you looked into? Did you have kind of conversations like this with other dads, maybe, people that are older or people that are on more of our age that were parents already? Did you look into like blogs? Did you watch videos? Like, what other kind of resources did you look into?
Leading up to it, yeah, we definitely read, but I would say a lot of our preparation was was very natural. We wanted to prepare as natural as possible, and one thing we learned quickly on is that everybody wants to give you advice. And that's great. I didn't want to ever feel like I was unappreciative of the advice I was being given, because I wasn't. I was very appreciative of it. I enjoyed every bit of it. There were some things I was being told that I'd be like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. But that was something for Paige and I to decide when we had our child, was, what are these decisions we're going to make? And as you read things and hear things for different people, you kind of sit there and go, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll do that. And then there were some things that we would read, hear from somebody, and it wasn't so much of an advice, but maybe things that they were doing with their child or things that they did with their baby. And we would sit there and go, oh, I would never. And then you have the child, and then everything you said you would never do are all of a sudden okay. It's okay to do that. Mommy and daddy are tired. You run into all those situations. Leading up to it, there is I want to say, handling the pregnancy was Mostly when Paige was pregnant and you're preparing, I didn't really try to prep for having a child. I don't know. I don't know how to word this, but I didn't really try to prep much for everything I was going to do after the baby was born. I was actually more focused on the pregnancy. In the moment, I was just wanting to make sure Paige was okay,
Mm-hmm.
things were taken care of. Are there things we need to be doing for her now to make sure I get a baby in 9 months? You just want to do everything that you could do to be careful, to kind of prepare, to get ready. And that was what I did mostly. Was Paige really worried about everything that we wanted to have and know and be able to do once the baby got here. But as husband, one of the things I really focused on was making sure she was taken care of in the
Mm-hmm.
now, making sure she was comfortable, making sure I was doing everything on my end, because when wife is pregnant, there is not a lot of raising that child that you get to do.
Yeah.
they're they're the keeper. They're the ones holding on to that baby in their stomach and sometimes having a miserable time with it. And while, yeah, like I said, I wanted to prepare for after the fact, but I I really wanted to take care of her in the now, and um, and I don't know this for a fact or anything, but one of the things I think uh, as at least for Paige maybe is, while being pregnant, it can become a uncomfortable experience. It sometimes gets a little hard to breathe, hard to stand up, hard to sit down, hard to lay down, hard to find any comfort, and sometimes I think it helped her to take some focus off of that and put a lot of focus into the after. This is all after I'm not pregnant anymore. And she actually put a lot of her focus on the after, and that kind of let me put a little bit focus on the now,
Mm-hmm.
and get her taken care of, get her situated. Whatever she needed, I tried to get, and that was what I focused on. But for her, yeah, she was always looking ahead. What pieces of equipment do we need? What clothes? Um, any kind of planning. Looking for the
Mm-hmm.
pediatrician. Looking for all those things. And I think for her, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I think one of the things that she really relied on was definitely friends. She had some friends that she asked questions of, but I think these days with Facebook, there's plenty of mom groups
Yeah.
out there that are great resources to go to, things to kind of help you on what is this that you recommend, uh, seeing people who have certain items and going, oh, what do you use that for? Yeah, Facebook and the collective community, you definitely find people who are in every bit of stage that you're going to be in. Mostly you find the people in your life who are huge resources. One of the things that when she was pregnant, I think, was just talking to other moms on what did you do as a
Yeah.
pregnant, and they would tell you, well, my feet would swell up and I would do this, and that would just give you advices on being pregnant. Once you have a child, there are multiple different avenues to start going to get resources for.
Yeah.
But when you are going through the pregnancy, I don't want to say there's not a lot of resources, but typically the doctor where you're going is kind of the resource at the moment. That's why picking one is a very big deal.
Definitely. Yeah. That's where, I mean, if anything, just reassuring, because obviously that's what I'm hoping to do here as I talk to people, is just lean on past experience that people's have had, what's worked, what hasn't worked, all of that. And I know I've heard a lot from her, of people she's talked to, people she's connected to through social media, because of this, that they get to pass advice back and forth because they're kind of in the same stages, and talking with their sister. And so I think definitely take everything with a grain of salt as far as kind of parenting advice, because obviously there's everyone has their own opinions across everything. So make sure you're taking it in, but then you're
Yep.
going to use what works for you as a couple and as a family. So I love that you kind of went into, because it was my next question anyway, about what you could do as a husband and as a father to be while your wife is pregnant to help make it easy on her. Because I was even thinking back as you were talking, like, okay, I get to have this moment when the baby's born, and that's like, okay, now I'm a dad, but like she's already a mom essentially. Like, I mean, sure, we're a dad already at this point, but she's the one carrying it, dealing with all the the physical pain, the emotional side of everything. What you gave some, but is there any more specific or pointed advice that you could speak to about what you can do as the husband to help take care of her, aside from getting her anything that she's craving and that kind of stuff? But like, what's something deeper that I could do to take care of her?
Well, so one thing that I've definitely realized is in the middle of all that, for husbands, things that I've learned is that the wife is going to be going through a lot of changes physically, emotionally, hormonally. Women tend to wear their hormones on their sleeve sometimes because it is, in my opinion, the female body is a very complicated body, especially for a guy who only understands his. I think a lot of women don't really understand their own body half the time because there's so many things going on that can scare them, freak them out, and a lot of things happen for your wife that even she can't explain, and that can get frustrating for somebody who wants to know what's going on, what has happened, what can I do. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times they don't have the answer either. They don't know, they don't know what's happening, and they don't know what you can do to fix it. um, Personally, I think it's just a lot of space. You definitely don't want to be the one going, hey, what's wrong with you? You were fine like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Because that makes things not okay. Just be as supportive as possible. Don't question why they want something, why they feel the way they feel, because half the time they don't know why they feel the way they feel, and you bringing up the fact that they don't know why they feel the way they feel makes them feel even worse about why they don't know why they feel the way they feel. It You can get into a bad cyclical uh, moment there if you say the wrong things. But yeah, of course, you're going to do these cravings runs. Some of them are a little weird, but I mean, you're not the one growing a human inside you. I can't imagine how it
Yeah.
feels once you start feeling kicks and things rolling in. I mean, I have stomach troubles every now and then, and my stomach will grumble. But can you imagine something like really making your stomach like protrude and move left, right, and all kinds of things? Like, yeah, it is a weird thing. They're going to be uncomfortable a lot. They're going to be sick a lot. Now, every pregnancy is different from what I've seen already. Just in the three we've had with Paige, it's been different for her all three times. She was sick a lot with one or two of them. She wasn't sick hardly at all with one or two of them. It just everything's different. You never know what it's going to be like. That's why when people try to give you pregnancy advice, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because what someone experienced may not be exactly what you're experiencing. And you may have some elements of someone else's pregnancy just similar to theirs. And you could have some elements of your pregnancy nothing like theirs. And if you only rely on one resource, you're going to start freaking yourself out on going, why is this happening to me? It didn't happen to this other person. That's why getting a collective amount of resource from different people on did you ever experience this, or just asking. You could even ask on these Facebook groups. I think Paige really enjoys some of her mom Facebook groups on, has anybody ever experienced this? And 9 times out of 10 everybody's like, yeah, I did actually. And now it does get a little freaky when you do that on a group of 1,000 women talking on a Facebook moms group and no one goes, no, that never happened to me. um, yeah, that kind of freaks you out a little bit. So you have to be careful what you're doing. And if you have any questions, a lot of times Paige would just ask her doctor, is this normal? Is this not normal? But as a guy, there's not a lot you can do. but other than just make them as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I've defaulted, because you don't want to keep asking, what do you need? What do you want? Are you okay? Like over and
Exactly.
over, because I can understand on, reverse of that, that would get annoying after probably 2 times. So, I'm doing my best to be consistent, I guess, in asking her, is there anything you need? Can I get you something? Can I do something? Can I go somewhere for you? Whatever, but not too much. And then, maybe after the second time, I tell her like, just I'm here. Let me know. I won't keep bugging you, but let me know if you need something. Just for the comfort of reassuring that, like I'm obviously I'm fully here in this. Like I'm ready to help and jump in. Obviously, there's not much I can do, especially physically, because you're the one carrying the kid. But
Right.
I want to be as involved as I can. I don't want to be just sitting back and like, nah, yeah, you deal with that, and then I'll start with the diapers down the road.
Yeah. So one of the things that, just looking back on it, if I could recommend anything, it's sometimes Paige didn't want me doing everything because, well, one, it made her feel weird, but one of the bigger reasons, and I think there's actually some the science behind it, but if you never let them get up, never let them walk around, never let them kind of at least go on a walk, go on a stroll,
Mm-hmm.
stand up, sit down, all these different things, they have to do that because it's actually bad for their health and the baby's health for them not to get up and move around and walk around and be active. You definitely, there's a balance. You definitely don't want to overdo it, but you definitely don't want to underdo it, because you not getting up and going on a walk is uh, the risk for, I think, blood clots in the legs and different things like that is increased. There's a lot of things that the body has to stay active and doing. So that's why I think pregnancy for women is very tiring, is because there's this level of activity you have to maintain already when your body's already wearing you out.
Yeah. Well, I looked at a little bit on that end because she's a pretty determined, kind of can't sit still most times kind of person.
I think
But
most of the wives in our friend group are.
yeah, and I kind of am too, especially, I mean, just not that I'm old, but, as I get older, I don't like to sit still for too long. So it kind of helps that, like, sometimes, like, I'm in that stage now where I get bored and I want to go clean up a little bit. So I think we're in a good spot that I enjoy helping out and helping people, and I enjoy a house being pretty clean. Not that we're always having a clean house, but I do enjoy it. So, but she's pretty on the ball with being active and taking care of things too. So, despite being tired, she gets her rest. I let her sit and do nothing whenever she wants to, but she definitely likes to go on walks and take care of things herself, because she wants to feel, like you said, like she's not just sitting around, she's accomplishing things.
Yeah, the biggest thing, and this started clicking for me pretty quickly, but and I just don't know if a lot of people realize it. But your wife is going to get very well rounded in her stomach, and that can be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It can make things a little different. It can make it hard to breathe. They get tired very, very fast. It can be pretty uncomfortable for them. And Paige had trouble sleeping sometimes, trouble breathing sometimes, and it gets difficult. But the thing to remember as a guy, your wife is going through all this time where she's having difficulty sleeping, difficulty even just relaxing and being comfortable, and she's going to get into a hospital room while dealing with all that, and then she has to go through either labor or surgery, one of the two, which neither one is relaxing. It is a very intense process. And then as soon as they're done with that, then they have a baby they have to take care of who is already going to wear you out. You have to, like, I think in my mind, you have to realize your wife is going to be going through tiring experience to another very tiring experience, and then back into another tiring experience.
Yeah.
There's no easy resting moments. So you have to be there every step of the way to give her those resting moments that she needs, cuz other than getting her pregnant and helping out with that baby, you don't have much control on things, and you just have to be there for her and make everything easy, make everything as carefree as possible. because on top of being so tired, their mind's going to be wandering left and right on taking care of this baby, everything they want to do in the future. So yeah, you are a support role, and you need to play the support role as best as possible.
Yeah, definitely so. Great advice. One last question. I want to shift gears a little bit. Like we mentioned before, there's tons of products out there. There's tons of, from the obvious strollers to cribs to, drying racks for bottles to toys to towels. It gets a little bit overwhelming because we're kind of in that early exploring phase where we're going to some of these stores and just at least trying to get our head around, like, what are the options? What can we get in front of us that we can decide, do we need this or not? So not necessarily a question of, what do you need for a baby, but what was a product or like a toy or an organizational kind of thing, anything like that you didn't think you would need or never even thought about before having a baby, that after you had, you found out about or got or was gifted and you realized this was like the greatest thing that I never thought about?
One of my favorites has probably been the Mamaroo. It is a little pricey. It's like a mini carnival ride for your infant, but it rocks them to sleep, and you can go different types of motions and speeds. It is very cool. It is highly recommended. It not only put my infant to sleep, but I think the motion kind of helped him get his bowel movements working. If we needed to get a poop out of him, we put him in that thing and it rocked the poop out of him. It was awesome.
There you go. So that's the insight I'm looking for right there. The real dirty stuff.
Yeah. How do you get that out? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely take a look at those. For the sake of us not probably talking for 3 more hours, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But sure, a ton of great insight. I'll have to go back and re-listen to this just to kind of relive some of the great stuff that you mentioned. So I'm excited about that. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll definitely do this again. Thank you for being on. Thank you for the advice. And if you have any other advice, keep them coming.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.